No, my gosh. I feel like this is my first time emceeing, so I appreciate your patience and understanding. But this is a big one. I mean, like, this is a big one. This is going to be a really fun chat. So I can't wait to have them up here while Brianna and team are setting up. Awesome. Well, have a wonderful time and enjoy the panel.
Hello, everybody. Is this on? So I'm Marguerite DeCourcel. I'm the CEO of Blockade Labs. We use AI to create virtual worlds. So think of it like a Midjourney, but in 360 and 3D for environments. And I'm here today with Erik Voorhees and Illia. And I actually am big fans of both of these guys since I started my crypto journey. Followed Erik's work early on in 2014. He's always been this advocate for freedom. And actually, Erik, I'd love for you to give a little intro on your history.
My history, sure. Hi, everyone. So yeah, I'm Erik Voorhees, and I have been in this crazy crypto world since 2011. Fell in love with Bitcoin as a way for humans to completely opt out of government-managed currency. And I felt like that was one of the most important things that could ever happen to humanity. And then along comes this mysterious guy named Satoshi, and suddenly it exists. So totally fell in love with it and have been building various projects in this ecosystem for 100 years now. Early on, Satoshi Dice, BitInstant, more recently Shapeshift, and now I've started to get the bug on the AI world. So yeah, we'll talk a little more about that.
Thank you. Illia, we've known each other since 2018, I think, when you launched Near Protocol, and his team has always been world-class. I don't think there's been a team that's hustled for me and tried to help me more than Near Protocol. So anyways, I had a joy finding out this deep background you have in AI in addition to your expertise in decentralization. Could you share a little bit of your story?
Yeah, so for about 10 years before I got into crypto, I was working in machine learning and deep learning AI, depends how you call it. And I always thought that the new way of interacting with computers, new way of kind of computing in general will come from advancement in AI, and especially in natural language. And before kind of getting into the startup game, I was at Google Research, and we were building models that actually were powering answering questions directly on google.com, as well as a few other places. And we were facing this challenge, which was the state-of-the-art models were not performant enough. They were too slow. And so a whole group of us ended up building transformers, which is the core technology that now powers ChatGPT, Midjourney, and a lot of other kind of advancements in AI. And I left to start Near AI, which was an AI company. We were teaching machines to code, which in 2017 sounded like a science fiction. And now seems like, yeah, a pretty reasonable idea. And we were actually doing a lot of crowdsourcing. We were having students around the world in China, in Eastern Europe, and kind of other countries doing work for us, writing some code, writing descriptions, and we had challenge paying them. And this is where kind of my crypto journey started in 2018, where we're like, okay, well, we need a global payment network that is kind of easy to use, that works globally in any country for people who don't have bank accounts. And Bitcoin and Ethereum sound like the systems like that. But even back then, the fees were already higher than what we paid people kind of per task. And so we started investigating the space. And that's kind of when we went and interviewed a lot of people in the space overall and kind of started Near Protocol as a way to challenge and address that.
Thank you. Yeah, just incredible background. Erik, you've recently, so with your crypto background, you've recently pivoted, or not pivoted, started contributing to AI.
Augmented.
And I remember we were talking not that long ago, and you're pretty passionate about your reason to jump in and start contributing. I'm curious if you could share with us, and maybe to help set some credibility for why AI has a place in the blockchain sector, not just as a token cash grab, which we've seen a lot of opportunists maybe pivot in the bear market and try to have this new narrative and story, but there actually is a case to be made that AI is a very important part of our blockchain evolution.
Yeah, well, okay, so let's paint like a dystopian picture for a moment. Imagine a world where everyone is using a large centralized AI service that comes from one big tech company, and that tech company is heavily regulated and controlled by a government. Everything that humans speak to the AI and get back from the AI is recorded by that company and siphoned off to that government. This means that everything that people know and think about and talk about and care about becomes centrally controlled, censored in small ways and big ways. And ultimately, that seems like a potential for a totalitarian nightmare. And it's also like not very science fiction. It is sort of the default position, and we're not very far off from it right now. So the way you solve something like that is not making sure that like the board of that big tech company is structured correctly. It's not to make sure that like the state regulations are done intelligently. The way you do it is you provide optionality for people, and that means that you have to have a decentralized foundational layer for AI. So for the same reason that I love decentralization and blockchains because they allow money to be permissionless, the very same principle holds with AI, with intelligence. So decentralization allows intelligence to be permissionless. And I think things like mathematics and money and intelligence and language should not be controlled by any single central party. That makes me kind of like a radical extremist, which is really sad, but still important. And it's really cool to see how much interest there is now in the crypto world, like helping to teach the AI world how to do permissionless systems. And there's certainly going to be a lot of like grifty AI by crypto projects, so watch out. But at the core, AI can benefit from decentralization because it can bring the attribute of permissionlessness to intelligence.
Thank you. So if we were to have this sort of network or system, and an ideal one, how would you, and Illia, I imagine you've thought about this because of Near Protocol and your AI background, how would you design such a system? What would the components be? Yeah,
so I think like, obviously depending on the timeline, there's different components that are needed. But maybe starting from like a future, where we want to end up is a fully sovereign operating system that has like access to all of your data, doesn't leak it out to any other company. It has an ability to transact, communicate, establish connection with everybody else, be that other individuals, communities, brands, and it is able to generate experiences for you. So I would say, like over time, we expect that the current way of you building applications where somebody, front-end engineer, builds a specific thing, will also start transitioning more into fully generated experience for you individually. All of this you want to, first of all, happen as much as possible on your side. You don't want your private data to go to some centralized party. You don't want to, your queries, your applications to be defined by somebody else. And so we do need local models that are able to run inference directly on your device. And so there's kind of on-edge, edge intelligence dimension to that. You do also have need for community models, for models that are represent knowledge and understanding and able to make decisions and potentially even allocate money and incentives. And this is where kind of decentralized inference comes in and provable inference comes in, as well as a lot of other pieces. And so there's kind of a whole spectrum of, from local models to inference on infrastructure side. We also need better foundational models that are open source. One of the kind of interesting challenges right now in the AI space is that if you're building a model and you're open sourcing it, you kind of don't have a good business model because anybody can grab it and run it, and you're not getting any attribution and kind of revenue from that. And so creating an incentive to improve these models is as well something that crypto is actually doing already through a few different projects. Now, there's a whole experience layer, right, where right now, the content we consume is coming from, different creators. There is a machine learning model that TikTok runs, for example, and that machine learning model for not China is optimizing on their profit, and for China, for example, optimizes because they have regulation on for kids, for example, to learn more. And so the fact that somebody else decides what your feed looks like is as well challenging. So we'll see transition there where the content will be generated for you, potentially from creators kind of putting different components and new characters in new places, and then all of this composed for you and ranked for you based on your interests, based on your demand. And I mean, you're actually working in that space as well. So there's kind of across the stack a lot of different components, and I have a huge diagram on how this should all work, but there's a lot of also challenges across the space as well.
Is this on your roadmap?
Yeah, so I mean, I put out this vision of fully sovereign operating system a couple months ago, and so we are kind of building a lot of the pieces in that direction, as well as we're working with a lot of startups in the broader near ecosystem who are building different pieces of these experiences to then kind of bring this overall novel way of interacting. So yes.
Amazing. Erik, were you following the news at all with Google's Genie conundrum with? So for people who don't know, there's a release where you were prompting and you were getting almost everything else except for what you were prompting or asking for. In a lot of ways, to try to be more correct or be inclusive. And so some of the conversations that have come up from that were, what is the source of truth? Who gets to control it? Who gets to decide it? Where does it come from? So I'm curious if you've thought about how decentralization could help with that problem.
Yes, well, so a lot of you are probably on Twitter and have seen this crazy Google stuff. But yeah, to give a simple example, it's like you prompt in for an image of the founding fathers of America, and you get back a bunch of Asian and Native American women, and it doesn't make any sense. And I think the real danger here is that you think that you're talking to a computer, but you're actually hearing back from humans. And it's kind of fraud, frankly, right? You're trying to use machine learning algorithms. You're basically trying to use a language calculator that is programmed to do statistical inference on language. And what you actually get back is a whole bunch of bias wrapped from people who believe that that's actually what you should know instead. This is obviously very, very dangerous, and I think that the answer to this, again, is not to regulate Google, but is to just make sure that there are alternatives, right? So if you go and you type in something to Google and it's totally absurd, and you go and you type in something to an open source decentralized AI alternative, and you actually get back a more reasonable answer, cool. That's how the competition should work. That's the best way to ensure that truth and intelligence are approached, because no one should have a monopoly on truth. Truth is something which is approached by mankind with iteration and experimentation. So it's really about having alternatives and avoiding some kind of centralized monopoly that just controls where everyone's information is coming from.
Maybe to add to that, fundamentally, these models represent what data you put into them. And so there is somebody somewhere deciding which training data is going in and which additional biases to add at inference time. And that decision making right now is completely opaque, right? This decision making also can include that if you have this email when you're using ChatGPT, the output should be different from this email. We don't, unless you actually test it in different ways, you wouldn't even know that this is happening. And so making sure that there is a community kind of curated data sets which people understand kind of the source of this data and how it went into it will be important. And in a way, the way Wikipedia is an open encyclopedia where people continuously updating and kind of interacting and arguing what's truth, right? We need similar thing to happen on training data for these models to be able to actually kind of discern that. Otherwise, we will be kind of in control of whoever is deciding which training data goes. And like for a specific example, there's somebody somewhere writing a Python script that literally decides which documents should be dropped from training data. And like that's because on internet, like if you look at the overall scrape, 50% of the time people say that Barack Obama is born in Kenya, and 50% that in Hawaii. Like that's literally statistics. And so there is somebody somewhere deciding on how to deal with those cases. And like right now, those decisions are completely opaque and are affected by ideology of a company that doing it, by government regulations of that headquarter of that company, and many others. So there's like there's no way a centralized company can actually do this right. Like it's the same as like social media censorship for like social media companies trying to censor content. There's no way to do it right because it's so much different from different jurisdictions, from different communities. And so we do need similarly kind of how we're trying to bring social media to Web3 and make it, that the layer of moderation happens on the front end. We need the same thing to happen on data and kind of build models of this like community curated data.
Yeah, we're not very far from situations in which the bias isn't just organic and generalized, so that everyone that puts in a prompt gets back something that's clearly wrong. It's not very far to realize that soon we'll have like targeted bias, where like you signed up with OpenAI with your email. Your email is all over the internet, and easy statistical connection tells the machine that okay, you are a Trump voter. Now the answer that you get back from OpenAI might be very tailored to either like a pro or anti-Trump kind of stance, or trying to subtly or overtly like change your mind on something. And I would hope that regardless of what people think of someone like Trump, that they would realize that there's something fundamentally fraudulent and scary when that kind of thing is being done. And at minimum, those kind of changes and biases could, if the company was being honorable, could just be stated clearly, right? Like, here's how we bias what we tell you. And we do this because we think these things are important, and so here's how we bias it, and here's how it's expressed. That would at least be like honorable, but that's not done at all.
You can ask the prompt inside the ChatGPT. There's a way to get it out, so like you can see the system prompt, but you cannot see the training data. So that's
The people that are a little more sophisticated can often like get the chat system to tell them like where the biases are, which is cool. But I don't think we're far from those things also being constrained, so that the amount of actual intelligence and information you can get is highly curated and pretty scary.
Well, the even scarier example for me is if you're running right now one of those companies that offering like ChatGPT like service, and you have a huge GPU bill, right? And you're making money from subscription fees, but not everyone can pay the subscription fee. And so the natural thing for you to do is to offer as a cheaper or free version, but monetize it through advertisement. And the reality is advertisement auctions are actually faster than the token production right now from these models. And so you can actually run an ad auction on every single token as it's being produced, pretty much completely like changing, small things like, oh, which car should I buy? Like, instead of seeing what statistical model tells you, being like completely affected by advertisement. And same, for political affiliation or anything else. And so I think like it's like, to me, that's like the most realistic scenario is this is going to happen because it's like so much economically like makes sense, and at the same time it completely biases people into like whoever pays more to affect your opinion on a specific thing.
Thank you. So in hearing you talk, I had the follow-up question thinking about if we're putting with the open source AI all this data so transparently and potentially even using blockchain in some of this instances, isn't that rather dangerous and risky too, especially with personal information, and what can be done to build a secure way to have this data without people being, at risk?
Yeah, so certainly like the most safe from a personal data perspective is to be running inference locally on your own device. And there's a lot of ways to do that that are not super technical or hard. And then you can do it without any internet connection, and you can just be interacting with the LLM directly on your own machine. If you're trying to be really private, that's the way to do it. Unfortunately, most people, even though they might say that they care about privacy, they often don't in their actual actions, and they'll just use whatever is easiest or cheapest. And so that's where we get into a lot of the problems.
So with that, where is the open source community really being targeted by regulators, and where are we most at risk at seeing a stunt in innovation on that front?
Okay, so most people don't know what happened last fall with the executive order. Basically, the executive order from the US White House stipulated a number of things that are to start coming into effect this summer, I think in June. These include things like requiring licensure for various models. These include things like restricting how many parameters can be in a model. Like, it's basically telling the population that like you're not permitted to do certain types of mathematics. Obviously, that is unconstitutional. Obviously, and yet it still happens with almost no fuss from anyone. These regulations are going to start being imposed, and they're only going to get worse because that's how these things work. And another of the key points is that the government will be considering whether to include the open source weights of models as a dual-use munition. For those who don't know or weren't like around in the 90s, strong cryptography used to be illegal to export and to use in many contexts. Cryptography, which is just mathematics, used to be considered a munition. And it was illegal to like send cryptography or to use it across borders. There was a huge fight back in the 90s about this, and now the exact same thing is happening, but with AI intelligence and these models. So at minimum, all you guys should be aware that this stuff is happening. And again, the solution, I don't think, is to talk to politicians about it, because they don't ever do anything useful. The solution is to actually build permissionless systems that you don't need anyone to give you, permission for. That's what crypto is really, really good at, and so that's what gets me excited.
Yeah, maybe to add here, like the reason why they're trying to add these regulations is because they're afraid of consequences of introduction of these machine learning models. And the reality is, like, those kind of regulations are not stopping anyone. Like, we are living in a global world where the fact that like you regulate in US doesn't really stop everybody else in the world to like get access, train these models and use them for evil and malicious use. But even just to like tell you an example, like misinformation doesn't need advanced intelligent tools. The example I really like is a journalist whose article was published on major news outlet was receiving like kind of questions from other people because they're like, why did you publish this? And when she went and saw it, somebody doctored the page and posted that on Twitter. And everybody thought that she indeed wrote that. Right? So the examples like this, like you don't need the like advanced intelligent tools. Like misinformation been existing for thousands of years, but like on internet being very prominent for a decade now. And what we do need is upgrade our quote-unquote society operating system. The operating system that we are all right now relying on information when we look at it kind of on face value. We don't, like similarly what happened with transition from HTTP, unencrypted content on internet, to encryption content, where before everybody saw your passwords if you were in a coffee shop. Anybody could actually replace your page when you're visiting it. Like we kind of replace that with encryption on end-to-end. We need to have similar thing happening now across the whole society. How you interact with government, how you interact with each other. The fact that like right now when you're making a video call, it's not encrypted, we're not exchanging keys, is like highly limiting and leads to like 25 million stolen recently when somebody thought they're like on video call with their colleague. So we need to actually upgrade our operating system and like all of the tooling to be cryptography first, and like blockchain plays a role as like a ledger, as coordination, identity layer, all kinds of things. But we need to do it now. Like this is not an AI problem. It's like people will use these tools. They'll figure out how to use them. People right now scamming, and you get a voice call that says your spouse got kidnapped. and actually just recorded a short, like 30 seconds of them talking, and now can like mimic their voice, right? That's already happening, and like none of the executive orders address any of these problems. So we actually have an opportunity here as crypto industry to address these problems. This is not like AI problem, it's like literally the society problem, and we have the tools to do that. So I'm like encourage everyone to actually work toward that.
I feel very inspired from that. Erik and Illia, we only have like a minute or so left. Just really quickly, what are you working on today that is working towards that future, that solution that you feel more optimistic about? What are your contributions?
As I was getting into the AI stuff, I learned about a project called Morpheus, which is an open source decentralized AI network. So since the fall, I've been contributing to that. And yeah, that's what I'm putting my time into.
Yeah, I mean, so as I said, like our global vision and long-term plan is this fully sovereign operating system. And so we have kind of both the blockchain part of it, which is near building out chain abstraction and really kind of creating really easy interface to bring people into cryptography. We have the most users now actually having the private key cryptography without actually knowing that they have it, being able to be on chain and transact. At the same time, edge models, so we have edge intelligence, which is starting to build up. Like, how do we make models smaller while still as intelligent, run them on device? And finally, working with a lot of startups to kind of as advisor to like help them bring their vision of kind of AI and Web3 together to fruition.
Thank you guys so much.
Thank you.
I hope you guys have a good ETHDenver.